Chapter 6, Understanding. It was morning time for the Jinchuriki and the paper user. Dew began to slowly evaporate from the leaves, and the birds chirped their songs in the wind that started the new day. The two ninja didn't really have the best night the night before, because of some unusual living arrangements that had to be enforced. As it turned out, Conan had to lodge with Naruto in his flat, and that caused a lot of awkwardness to ensue. Conan didn't really mind the living arrangements, because she would rather have a bed to sleep in than a cot in a tent like other ninja had to suffice with. Naruto on the other hand was in rejection to the arrangements, and even ran down to the new halfway-built Hokage tower, and complained to the Godame about it. Sanada brought up a lot of many great reasons as to why this would be the best choice. Luckily, Naruto's flat was one of the first things the village built again, because if it wasn't, then they both would have had to share a tent together. The village was also enraged of her stay, so she couldn't live on her own. There would be many assassination attempts. Also, they will be training together because of Naruto's Rinnegan, so they would need to spend as much time together as possible, just in case something unusual happened. Their added time to each other also means they can learn from each other and build good teamwork with one another, because they will need it. Plus, Conan felt obligated to stay around the Jinchuriki anyway. Naruto mildly complained, but realized that everything Tsunade said was true. Conan didn't complain one bit. Her heart actually felt a bit calmer upon that information. It seemed the Sennin trusts Conan to be around Naruto, even so far as to live with him. Wasn't Tsunade worried that something would happen? Conan wouldn't have felt entirely comfortable staying in constant sight of the Jinchuriki if they were to share a tent, although, not to say that she wouldn't have minded that either. If she had no choice, then it was perfectly fine. It wasn't her first time having to get used to new living arrangements. It was a random thought that crossed her mind, but she still didn't like the idea of not having a room. She had one in a megacure before battles broke loose in the city, but her place and aim didn't matter anymore because her life was currently in the Leaf Village protecting the next prophetic child. Of course, she remembered herself being the Omegakure cage and fulfilling the responsibility of keeping the village safe. She actually thought about it a lot more than before, but her mind was made up about several things. The village is in no near danger anytime soon, because there is nothing of importance there for the Akatsuki to invade. Another thing that never left her mind was the fact that she was basically kept in Konoha against her will. Yes, she could hold her own against a few powerful shinobi, but the village would only overpower her in the end and win. She also thought about the undeniable will that was passed down to Naruto whenever Nagato saw him eye to eye. That will called for true peace. She almost forgot about her conditional, yet unconditional protection to Naruto's well-being. Conditional meaning she would get killed if she didn't follow up in Naruto's training, and unconditional meaning that she wanted to protect Naruto for his passed down will and claiming him to be the true child of prophecy. Mainly, the last part about protecting the boy was her reason for staying. They found themselves beginning to practice in the training grounds. It was no later than 8 in the morning, and both ninja realized they needed to remain focused, so they started with practicing on his techniques again. Conan laid herself on the wooden log just like the day before to catch her breath, but didn't have to stay as long. Her recovery was going along rather well, and it seemed as if she would be seemingly normal in the next couple of days. Naruto did some early stretches to prepare himself. He was utterly psyched upon learning more about these two techniques. After another breath, Conan got up a guy and looked at the eager blonde. "All right, are you ready?" "Oh man, are you kidding me?" Naruto blurted out with excitement stirring in his voice. "I've been waiting since yesterday." She let out a smile that was barely noticeable, but returned with her voice, "Okay, so you know the basic idea as to how to use the Bansho Tenin. Now it is time to teach you how to use the Shinra Tensei." Naruto got into his thinking pose and activated his Rinnegan for the lesson. "But before I do that, there are some things I have to tell you about the Rinnegan before we start." She closed her eyes and heaved a sigh. "The reason I tell you to activate your Rinnegan is so you can do everything I tell you. No, it is not like the Sharingan, where you can copy countless jutsu, but it does give you better memory altogether. Do you remember everything that happened yesterday while your Rinnegan was activated?" Naruto looked at her for a second and began to think. "I don't know." "All right, well then I will help you remember with a simple question." She spoke with slight annoyance but with simplicity. "How many times did you use the Bansho Tenin?" "That's easy," Naruto scoffed. 258 times. "Wait a minute. I always lose count when I practice, so I shouldn't have known that." "That's exactly what I was trying to tell you. Rinnegan gives you a better memory of everything that happens," the blue-haired woman replied with nonchalance. "It also gives you a clearer mind to where you can think rationally in even the most intense of situations." "Wow. That's amazing," the blonde said with awe. "I see why Nagato was so strong now." "Yes, but that does not cure the irrationality that you obtain through anger and rage. If you do not forget that, then you will be fine. Naruto thought about her words for a minute. Anger tended to be a very difficult thing to ignore, since there were times where he couldn't really control himself. All right, I will try. Good. Since you now know this, I can teach you Shinra Tensei, she replied without much hesitation. Shinra Tensei is a little harder to maneuver for several different reasons. But since I told you why yesterday, we can just start the lesson now. Naruto nodded his head in agreement. Okay, do you remember how I told you to compress the chakra in your hand until it becomes invisible? The blonde shook his head again. Well, this time you compress the chakra in your hand to where it becomes unstable. I am pretty sure this part will be a little easier to achieve since you have technically mastered the Bensho Tenon, Conan replied dully, just so that same exact thing you did before except make it to where you synchronize your chakra throughout your whole body, while simultaneously unbalancing your chakra in your hand. The Jinchuriki's face fell off from Conan's explanation. You make it seem like it is so easy. The Jonin looked at him unimpressed. You said the same thing about Bensho Tenon, and yet you have basically completed that move in one day. This one should be no different. His expression changed from one of concern to one of happiness, then without saying a word, he began to try it out, closing his eyes to concentrate. He lifted his hand and put full focus into the move, opening his eyes again only seconds later brimmed with confidence. A faint whisper in the winds alerted something was happening before an explosion erupted out of Naruto's palm, blowing him backwards into a tree. He hit it with much force, causing leaves to shake loose and fall to the ground. Once the momentum ceased, his body slumped over, and he did not say a word. Naruto-san, are you all right? Conan asked as she walked over to him. Slight concern etched across her face from Naruto's little stunt, while she kneeled down next to the boy. The Jinchuriki brought his face up to match her eye level, and began rubbing the back of his head with his hand while laughing sheepishly. Ha! Guess I used too much chakra, huh? A sigh escaped her lips from the immediate laugh he gave her. No, that's not it at all. Your body was not in exact sync with your chakra, and it caused you to fly backwards. Look, she replied while lending a hand and helping him up. The reason why I tell you to be in sync is because your body has to withstand the force the expulsion brings, and that means you have to endure the gravitational force it releases. Ooh, the orange-clad ninja answered, as if he just figured it out. So just match my chakra level throughout my entire body while doing the technique, and I should be able to stay in one place if I do this. Precisely. Heh. All right then, he replied with a determined grin. This time, I know I can do it. The blonde then closed his eyes one last time to concentrate and sync his chakra. He opened them shortly after and held out his right hand again just like he did previously. Once he did that, another whisper in the wind pierced through the air. A mere second later, a strong burst expelled from his hand, causing dirt, leaves, and a few sticks to fly away opposite of his position. The hand clap session was heard from Naruto's left once he finished. It made him feel really proud to know that he somehow succeeded in satisfying his teacher and succeeded in basically mastering the move. He turned his head to give her his trademark grin, but light heaves from her direction caused him to stop. He looked over to her and saw her face contorted with anguish in a feeble effort to stop the sudden rush of emotion. She pulled her hands up to her face and began wiping the tears that were continuously falling down her soft cheeks. Her sobs grew more and more uncontrolled as her heaving became irregular. She was clearly distressed, but the question was, what was it about? Naruto thought about it for a minute. It was really bothering him to see her look that way. She was in agony and he really didn't know why. Conan-chan, are you okay? Naruto asked as he walked over to her. She still sobbed even louder than before, completely ignoring the blonde's question, which left Naruto to stop in his tracks. He halted his hand from reaching over to her and dropped it to his side. It seemed like this was one of those times where Naruto didn't know what to do. Thinking it was the best choice in the matter, Naruto just turned around and started walking away. He thought that there are just some times when people needed to be alone. His steps faded as she continued lightly sobbing. She went over to a tree and slid her back against the bark all the way to the ground. Her conscience was spinning in all directions, making her feel like she was going insane. It all came crashing down again, consuming her. Later, Naruto paced himself through the streets of Konoha. His mind was somewhere else, because he really wasn't watching where he was going. He bumped into a couple of people who, in return, gave angry shouts until they recognized who he was. Once they did, it went from meanness to niceness at the drop of a hat. They began shouting apologies and begging forgiveness for their rude behavior. The blonde merely shrugged it off and told them it was no big deal and walked away. He was too lost in thought to really care what others had to say. He was more concerned about Conan. He's been unusually broody ever since he came home from defeating Nagato. What is wrong with her? She just all of a sudden started crying. The blonde replied to no one as he sat down on a bench. Is it because of him? He started pounding his fist on the bench, forcefully creating cracks on its surface. I don't understand. Naruto? The Jinchuriki looked up upon hearing his name and noticed a figure standing beside him. She carried her usual attire of red with her hitai going around her head, pulling her pink hair up. Oh, hey, Sakura-chan. Hey, I was wondering where you were, the pink-haired girl replied with a smile while taking a seat beside him. What are you doing here? Naruto asked, putting his gaze to the ground. I am just helping rebuild Konoha on the west end, and I decided to take a break. What about you? Aren't you usually training or something? It's kind of early for you to be sitting out here. Yeah, I guess you're right, Sakura-chan, the orange-clad boy replied with a smile. Sakura then noticed something strange about her friend. He had that look on his face again. That same look he had when she helped him with Conan. That same look when he couldn't get Sasuke back. A look of guilt. It didn't only appear on his face, but it appeared in his eyes as well when he looked at her. Are you alright, Naruto? The pink-haired girl asked her longtime friend. He only stared at her for a second, then sunk his head a little lower than normal. He knew that Sakura could see through anything. That he tried to attempt, so he answered truthfully, no, not really. Is it about Sasuke? The girl asked him quietly, who only shook his head in disagreement. No, it's about Conan-chan, Naruto responded with a depressed demeanor. Chan? Sakura though perplexed. But knowing that Naruto was troubled at the moment, she let that slide and kept it for later. She's not doing anything to you, is she? Is he trying to change you? Just tell me and I'll know, Sakura-chan, it's nothing like that. Well, what is it? Naruto thought about it for a minute. He had to put the right words into what he was about to say, so he looked around the area for a moment, then heaved a sigh and looked into the sky. Well, she was training me today. Right now, I am learning how to use the Rinnegan and the moves that come with it. Rinnegan? She shouted to Naruto wide-eyed. She never knew that Naruto had the Rinnegan. Actually, she hasn't talked to Naruto since they healed Conan. He didn't really talk then either, so nothing was ever really said between the two of them. As of late she had been too busy helping the village restoration to actually give him time of day. That is not to say that she didn't want to see him. When she had breaks, he was never around his usual places where she normally found him, so it couldn't be helped. Yeah, I have the Rinnegan. Nagato gave it to me. Nagato? Who's Nagato? Sakura asked, confused. She really wasn't in the loop of things that happened in the last week because of confidential reasons, but it sounded like she was about to get her fill. Do you know him as Pain, the guy who destroyed the village? The Kunoichi gasped at his answer. Pain was some guy named Nagato and he willingly gave Naruto the Rinnegan? That seemed a little too far-fetched in her opinion. There is no way that he could give Naruto that type of responsibility. But then again, Nagato did revive everyone that died, after what Naruto said to the man that made him second-guess his reason. Okay, well, why are you depressed because of Conan? The girl asked him, a little curious. She figured now was not the best time to discuss all of the Sakatsuki business out in the open since people were still trying to adjust. She didn't really trust the blue-haired Jonin either, so she had to get the scoop of what was troubling the young Uzumaki. Naruto sighed softly, but quickly answered, we were practicing today, just like the day before. Nothing was wrong really. Actually, everything was going great. He then grew a moderate grin on his face at the recollection. I learned how to do both of the gravity moves that Nagato knew how to do basically in 2 days, and that is without having to use clones for added training time. Sakura's eyes widened a bit after hearing that. Naruto learned those moves that destroyed the village, moves that require months of training for? There's just no way. This really stumped the pink-haired girl in many ways. First off, Naruto was Naruto. It was not possible for him to learn an entire jutsu in a day, especially since they were very powerful and consumed a lot of chakra. As a matter of fact, it was literally impossible to learn a jutsu in a day. Second, he never even used his Kage Bunshin to help him cut down the training time, which made no sense at all. Did the Rinnegan have something to do with that? She was quickly thrown out of her ruminations as she heard the blonde continue. Just as soon as I finally completed the Shinra Tensei, she started crying. Naruto hesitated as he finished his last statement. It was really bothering him to a degree, where it was the only thing on his mind, which was strange. I called her name, but she didn't say anything. Then, I sort of left, because I thought that she just wanted to be alone. He then looked at her with pleading eyes. Sakura-chan, I don't know what to do. Why is she crying? The red-dressed girl closed her eyes and pondered the situation. She didn't really know the whole ordeal, so she was a little short on words. Hearing that Conan, an ex-Akatsuki, was crying, she felt like that sort of thing was impossible. But then again, she's human after all. For some reason though, hearing that Naruto left the blue-haired woman alone really upset her. Actually, that was the first thing that came to her mind when he said that. "Why did you leave her?" Sakura asked in an annoyed tone. I thought, let me ask you a question, Naruto. Did you want to be alone whenever you cried?" "Hey." Wait, the blonde boy was taken aback by what she asked. He tried to rebuttal the question, only to be cut off by Sakura again. "Even if she was the enemy, she is still just a person like you and me, no matter how hard I don't want to accept it." Naruto tried to say something in Sakura's rant, but she overpowered his voice, leaving him with nothing but a squeak. "Naruto, she's obviously in a state of anguish. She's been forced to live in Konoha against her will, and I don't think that is something to easily get over. Even though you did save her life, it's not like she asked you to save her." The girl sat her back to the backrest and heaved a sigh. "Honestly, I don't know exactly what's going on in her head, but I do know that if I was in a situation like she was in, then I would be the same way." That little outburst really left him speechless. Sakura was right. Naruto didn't have to save her, but he did anyway. Not only that, now Konan was forced to live in Konoha. That's right, she can't leave. Damn it. I totally forgot she was forced to stay here. Why didn't I plan this better? I'm such an idiot. He began to pound his fist on his leg in a fervent attempt to recognize his problem. Of course, Konan would be upset about being forced somewhere she doesn't want to live. He was left feeling a little numb. He had to make it up to her somehow, but the question was, how was he going to do that? There was nothing that he could do to make her forgive his short-sighted decisions. "Honestly, Naruto," Sakura began with her usual bashing on the blonde, "I thought you would have grown up by now, but I guess you never really did learn anything." Naruto looked down into his lap once she said that. It was the usual when it came to Sakura. He would always do something wrong and end up hearing his faults and what he did wrong. She was more like a mother scolding her child every time he did something. "Yeah, I guess you're right." "Huh?" The pink-haired girl wasn't really expecting that one. He usually tried to back himself up with his answers and usually says something that is irrelevant. It was as if it was actually getting to him. "Yeah, you're right, Sakura-chan. I just don't know what to do." Sakura began brooding about it by placing her hand on her chin. "The only thing you can do now is apologize to her, although I doubt that will do anything, being as how it wouldn't really matter." Naruto sighed and slumped over even more at her declaration. She was really cutting him down. The girl noticed his state, and it made her hesitant to say any more. She really wasn't helping him at all, and it took her a few seconds to realize it. He probably already knew that he couldn't change anything, and she was only adding to the fire. She grinned slightly to try and turn things around. "Hey, it's not like you to be so down. Lighten up," she replied while giving him a slap on the back. "I'm sure you'll figure it out, Naruto. You tend to figure everything else out on your own, so what makes now any different? You're not going to let something this small affect you, are you?" He looked at her from G's sudden back slap. She showed solid support for the blonde boy, and it made him realize one of the reasons why he liked her. "Heh. Yeah, I guess not." "That's great to hear," Sakura stated happily. "Now, are you going to be depressed all day, or are you going to try and fix the problem?" His smile widened before it turned into his trademark foxy grin. "I'll fix it." "Great. Who knows, Naruto? Maybe she could end up falling for you, and you both could end up in a kinky relationship," she replied with a mischievous grin. Naruto blanched after that, but did a 180 and blushed afterwards. "Aw, Sakura-chan, don't say something like that." He then slumped over in embarrassment, causing the pink-haired girl to laugh. Sorry, she giggled while waving her hand dismissively and looked at Naruto. However, that gaze slowly changed into a confused look on her face. She didn't know what it was, but something else was different about her Jinchuriki friend. Naruto noticed her odd looks and brought them to question. What is it?" Sakura, startled from her eyeing the boy, quickly asked, unsure. "Did you do something to your hair?" The blonde simply stared at her with a similar puzzled expression before answering, "No. It's the same as it always has been." "Why do you ask?" She looked one more time before sighing and producing a smile. "It's nothing. Anyway, I guess I'm going to go. The village doesn't build itself, you know." "All right, Sakura-chan," Naruto replied with perplexity. They then bid each other farewell as the pink-haired girl left. After she was gone, his face went blank as he was faced with the challenge of apologizing to his new teammate.
End of chapter 6.